Hi beautiful people. I'm still traveling, hence the new backdrop. I am currently in Oregon with my friend Meredith, and if you want to follow my travels, please join me at God is Gray on Instagram. Today we're going to talk about something heavy, and that is the overcrowded detention centers at our border, or more specifically, family separation. So this is something I almost didn't even want to address because I already know I'm going to get clicks from people who are hard-headed, who have already decided how they feel about this issue. But for any of you in the God is Gray community, you know that this channel is about discussion and disagreement and opening our hearts and minds on these really big gray issues. So what I'm asking of you guys is to try and keep your heart open. Obviously this issue is political, but I don't want our conversation here to revolve around our politics. This is really going to be my opinion as a Christian on how we as spiritual people need to be addressing what's happening at the border. I'm going to bring in facts and statistics, and it might get a little boring in the middle because I do want to explain to you guys how we got to where we are today. But I really hope you'll stick around to the end because I have something beautiful I want to share with you guys. There are, of course, people representing the worst side of this issue. Those Americans who have forgotten that their own relatives immigrated here so that they could have a better life. These people talk about hurling burritos and that Mexican people are scum, and it truly makes me sick. But I actually believe, or I hope, that most people concerned with immigration are not extremists like that. People want our border protected, and national security is an important issue. The problem becomes that we, as Americans, are manipulated by news outlets and politicians. Again, I'll ask you to revisit my us versus them video because we are pitted against one another. On certain news outlets, journalistic integrity is not something we the public can rely on. For example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez goes to the border firsthand and reports that people are drinking from toilets to survive. Fox News reports she's a liar.
Sad to see, she's getting bolder with her lies.
So how are we to discern a truth from a lie? Because in this case, someone is lying. You may choose to believe a truth based on your environment, your state, or your political sway. And with that said, this video cannot be about me trying to convince you that my side is right. Especially because family separation at the border is a political issue. And this channel, like faith itself, is not about politics. It is about searching our hearts for the truth. The truth is, people will always be fighting their way into America. And yes, we need to police that, but we need to do it in a way that dignifies human beings. Right now, we are doing the former and not the latter. And what would Jesus say? Luke 25, the parable of the Good Samaritan. An expert of the law asked Jesus, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." The man wanted to know, who is my neighbor? And Jesus answered with a parable. A man was stripped, beaten, and left for dead. A priest saw him, but crossed to the other side of the road. A Levite did the same. But when a Samaritan came upon him, he had compassion. He went to him and bandaged his wounds. He took care of him. Jesus asked, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor?" The law expert replied, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said, "Go and do likewise." In this story, people passed over the man because he wasn't one of them. Jesus intentionally pointed out that they were from different faiths, from different places, and therefore these people treated the man as the other. And at this point you may be saying, well Brenda, what do you expect me to do about the border? How do we protect our country and treat people like our neighbor? And believe me, that's a complicated question, and I do not have the solution here. But what I do want us to recognize as Christians is when we are being manipulated into seeing people as the other. And this is not to say we compromise, that our borders are wide open, but it is to say that we are not separate from these people. They are not the other. We are all God's children. And if Satan is Diabolos, the divider, look at what he's accomplished. He has separated children from their families. And what is the effect of that?
So, we need to take care of him. I think I need to leave, okay?
¿Quién te ha dicho que no te quiero?
Jesus Jesus lived at a time when children weren't valued as they are today. And still, in Matthew 18, he said, "If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea."
I read today about a 10-year-old girl with Down syndrome who was taken from her mother and put in a cage. I read about did you say want to a 10-year-old with Down syndrome?
This man's indifference is despicable. Biblically, there's no question. God values children, and so must we. Another person whose words and actions I would categorize as despicable is Department of Justice Attorney Sarah Fabian.
If you don't have a toothbrush, if you don't have soap, if you don't have a blanket, it's not safe and sanitary. Well, wouldn't everybody agree to that? Do you agree to that?
Well, I think there's fair reason to find that those things may be part of safe and sanitary.
Maybe, are a part. What do you say, maybe?
And in fairness to Trump, Sarah Fabian has been dehumanizing children for years. Under Obama, she defended putting children in solitary confinement. Again, this video is not about opening our borders. It is about dignifying human beings. In this case, children. And some will argue, well, this is the fault of the parents. They should have never been brought here in the first place. And for this, we have to dive into the difference between illegal immigrants and asylum seekers. There are 4 things to consider. 1, the former head of ICE, Thomas Homan, claimed it is simply procedural that all parents accused of a crime are separated from their children, and that entering the country illegally was their crime.
We are a law enforcement agency. We are enforcing the criminal laws.
However, 2, it is legal under US law to enter the country in any way if you are seeking asylum, meaning you are seeking protection from persecution. And number 3, crossing the border illegally is only a misdemeanor on first offense. Our country's policy used to be trying the parents fairly quickly and most often releasing them from custody while awaiting their immigration hearing. But 4, Trump didn't like this system and called it catch and release. And this is why things changed.
We catch a criminal, a real criminal, a rough, tough criminal. We take his name and then we release him. Right. And we say, please show up to court in a couple of months. You know what the chances of getting him to court are? Like 0.
However, Trump's statistic of 0% is far from the truth. The system we had was working. According to the American Immigration Council, in 2018, 96% of asylum seekers attended their court hearings. And under Obama's Family Case Management Program, 99.3% of participants attended their immigration court proceedings. Trump discontinued this program even though ICE itself called it an overall success. Which brings me to the last and maybe most important thing I will address, and that is people seeking asylum. And again, I leave this to you guys, to the God is Great community, to look at these people seeking asylum, look into their country of origin, and figure out what it is they're running from. Think of the 3-year-old refugee, Aylan Kurdi, who washed up drowned on the Turkish shore. Remember Moses, the baby whose mother made the excruciating decision to risk her child's life in order to save it. No one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. And with that, I'd like to leave you guys with something beautiful. This is a poem from one of my favorite writers, Warsan Shire, a Somali woman based in Britain. Stay here, if you will, for a moment. Close your eyes and imagine you are doing the unthinkable. Not because you want to, but because you have to. Beforehand, I'll say my goodbyes. I love you guys. God bless.
No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well. Your neighbors running faster than you, breath bloody in their throats. And the boy you went to school with who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factories, holding a gun bigger than his body. You only leave home when home won't let you stay. No one leaves home unless home chases you, fire under feet, hot blood in your belly. And even then, you carry the anthem under your breath, only tearing up your passport in airport toilets, sobbing as each mouthful of paper made it clear that you would not be going back. You have to understand, no one would put their children in a boat unless the sea is safer than the land. No one burns their palms under trains, beneath carriages. No one spends days and nights in the gallbladder of a truck feeding on newspaper unless the miles traveled mean something more than journey. No one crawls under fences, wants to be beaten, wants to be pitied. No one chooses refugee camps or strip searches where your body is left aching, or prison because prison is safer than a city of fire and one prison guard in the night is safer than 14 men who look like your father. No one could take it, could stomach it. No one's skin would be tough enough. The go home blacks, refugees, dirty immigrants, asylum seekers, sucking our country dry. Niggers with their hands out, they smell strange, savage, messed up their own country, and now they want to mess up ours. How do the words, the dirty looks, roll off your back? And maybe it's because the blow is softer than a limb torn off, or the words are more tender than 14 men between your legs, or the insults are easier to swallow than rubble, than bone, than your child's body in pieces. I want to go home, but home is the mouth of a shark. Home is the barrel of a gun, and no one would leave home unless home chased you to the shore, unless home told you to quicken your legs. Leave your clothes behind, crawl through the desert, wade through the oceans, drown, save, be hungry, beg, forget pride. Your survival is more important. No one leaves home unless home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave, run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know that anywhere is safer than here.